This episode of GatherGeeks is sponsored by BrandLive. Virtual shouldn't mean second rate. Your special events deserve a special stage no matter the format. BrandLive has supported thousands of events, huge stars, millions of guests, and the President of the United States. Make your whole team happy. Give presenters confidence, blow your audience away, and nail that run of show. With dedicated event support and the tools you need to be an event superhero. Visit brandlive.com to learn more.
Are you a
follower?
9, 8, okay, so we're gonna probably add.
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here's your host, BizBash chairman and founder, David Adler.
Today we are in for a huge treat. We are speaking with Glenn Haussman, the host of one of the most popular hospitality podcasts called No Vacancies. His 5-year journey into the world of podcasting is based on more than 25 years in the hotel industry and as a charismatic, engaging speaker at hospitality conferences. Our conversations spanned everything from what we both miss and don't miss from attending live events, the good and the bad of virtual, as well as how training to be a speaker is as important as being a good participatory guest at an event. We spoke of the exciting changes that have been accelerated by the pandemic as we enter the golden age of events, travel, and hospitality. He laments about the upcoming labor shortage that he's hearing about from hotel organizations who are having trouble bringing back some of the workers. We're also going to get a take on the behavior, all the different character types in our industry, from the global nomads to the digital natives to the new ownership groups that are plotting schemes to take advantage of distressed properties. We even touch on the new automation tools that will be everywhere, including robotic dishwashers that don't even ever break a dish. His new book, to be released, called The Adopter, summarizes the new innovation in a nutshell. Let's take a listen to Glenn. Just a warning to you, this is a very high energy discussion, so enjoy it. Glenn, you've got this all-star reputation in the hospitality industry, and you have this great tagline that you want to make the hospitality interesting. What the hell does that mean? And when we talk about it, I know we have similar backgrounds, that we've come from the editorial side, and we've seen everything. So I want you to talk today in terms of the context, not just for the hospitality industry, but how do you make conferences better? How do you make experiences better? What do we know? Because we're so in the weeds and we talk to people.
Yeah, I think, listen, first of all, I've seen everything, but I'm not allowed to talk about everything, right? That's a journalism code right there. But when you're talking about events and stuff like that, the major problem that I see is that people keep doing it the same old. We've done it this way before, so we're going to continue to do it that way. And they leave out the incredible gap about how they, as individual human beings, like to learn, like to absorb information. I don't understand why there's that disconnect. So you go to these conferences, and a lot of times they're horrifically boring in a lot of senses. Now, I love the conferences, I love the events, and I love the people involved. But if I'm sitting in a room listening to people on stage, there are so many things that just drive me insanely crazy that these companies do that I just simply don't understand. My whole mantra, educate, empower, entertain. I don't get that from any of these events that I go to. Nothing against you event people. I love all of you. And I like you all personally. But
what is number one?
The number one thing that really bothers me is, like, you go to these financial conferences and then they have the different prognosticators that are going to give you the report on the industry numbers. And you have the one person who's going to sit up there and talk for 10 minutes. And then you got 3 or 4 other people sitting there, and they're forced to sit on that stage and stare into space and pretend they're incredibly engaged and listening. And I feel how painful it is for each and every one of them. Why do they have to stand on stage? Why can't each person just come out, do their individual shtick, and then come on stage and have a little bit of a group conversation? So I don't get that. That's one thing that bothers me. The other thing that bothers me is a lot of the moderators out there, they don't listen. They have a list of questions. Now, this is not the moderator's fault. This is because these are not professional moderators. These are people that have been put into service for 1 hour a year or 2 hours a year or whatever it might be. So they don't have the experience. So they got their list of questions, and they go through their list of questions, and they don't listen to what anybody is really saying, as opposed to, oh, that's great. And then they don't do any follow-up questions. They don't have that curiosity, that journalism background that you and I have, David, that helps create excitement, that helps create a back and forth of conversation, that helps create a sense of energy in the room.
You are 1000% correct. Like, when the idea of not listening is intense, because when we're planning this type of thing, I don't script this out because I don't know what you're going to say.
Right.
Podcasting is such a great medium to do this well.
That's right. Now, I get all the time from the PR people. And again, I have to couch every comment I'm saying with, I love you. But listen, same thing over and over. Going to be coming on your show. What questions are you going to ask that person? I don't know. I said, let's talk about a couple of topics we'll talk about, but I'm going to listen and I'm going to respond. And I always tell people, to me, the most exciting thing of any session that we do together, be it on stage, in the podcast, a video, is if we go in a direction that none of us expected to go in and we find that satisfying. I don't see anybody with that ethos out there doing it. Everyone just sticks to the rules.
How do you feel about interrupting?
It depends.
Okay.
Right? I try really hard not to interrupt, but if you're doing an interview and you're trying to create a show, sometimes you have no choice but to interrupt someone. You have to either sometimes save them from themselves, or human tendency a lot with people that are not experienced speakers is to say the same thing 2 or 3 times in the same section if you don't cut them off at some point. So one of the things I do before going on stage sometimes is to cover that and not make them feel bad. And I hope none of them are listening right now, but I'll say, hey, listen, if I cut you off during the thing, it's nothing personal. It has nothing to do with you. It's just I have to do X, Y, Z in a certain amount of time, and I need to keep the show moving. So please.
I totally do that. And the other thing that drives me insane about what the world used to be like, and then I want to get to what it's like right now, is that nobody would ever care about what I was going to say. When I talk to the organizers, they don't even care. In fact, they don't even listen to what I'm going to say because they're in the front room talking to each other.
Sorry, I was busy talking to someone. I missed what you were saying.
Yeah. But they're not into the content. Now in the virtual world, because content is more important, there's more production people involved, and it becoming a little bit more like television in the virtual world.
No, I'm doing that, and I haven't seen that. And the biggest Achilles heel for them and the biggest advantage for me is all of these people trying to come in right now. They don't have a fundamental understanding that doing something on stage is fundamentally different than doing something in the medium that we're doing here. Right now, we're doing just audio. But when you add that video to it, it's also very different. The rhythm is different. The pace is different.
What is the basic, if you're going to give like your training, what would you say is the number one sort of difference?
You got to go back to think about how TV shows and stuff are cut. You guys are out there, you're watching 24-hour news channels and stuff like that. You see the pacing of those shows. Why are you sitting there and having somebody drone on for 15 minutes straight? It doesn't make any sense in this medium.
Somebody told me that in the virtual world, 5 minutes in virtual is 15 minutes in real world.
Yes, but I would add that 5 minutes in the virtual world is more like 15 years.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Someone's speaking for 15, 20 seconds, and it feels like an eternity sometimes.
Have you seen old movies and how slow they are?
Oh, my goodness. I love watching the old movies, but yeah, man, the pacing is so different. And I think that's a great way to put it, because a lot of times when you see what people are doing, it could be a Humphrey Bogart film instead of a Tom Cruise movie, a Mission Impossible film. So the differences are absolutely huge. I don't think younger people have the patience for that type of pacing, just because they came up in the post-blockbuster era when things really changed.
Yeah. What do you think is the attention span of the average attendee at an event, or just an average person on a podcast?
8 seconds. I kid, but it's really short.
Really short.
A lot of times, and to me, the greatest achievement I could have, David, now I got to go step into the way back machine to when we used to have events a year ago, is to see nobody on their phones when I'm doing action. That is my goal.
Okay.
Times people sit, they spend all this money to go to a conference, then they take the effort to go to the breakout session, they sit in the breakout session, and they spend the entire time on their phone. Whose fault is that? That's the moderator's fault, and it's the panelist's fault.
Well, here's the other thing I think is the biggest problem. I'm on a big rage against CEOs that don't know how to be hosts, because I think that they are throwing the opportunities away for events in thinking that people have to go suck up to them when it's their job to suck up to their guests, no matter who they are.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. You're absolutely right in regards to that. And it drives me crazy. A CEO, particularly in 2021 and beyond, has to be an amazing communicator, not just in a private room, but on podcasts, on videos, and on stage.
So what do you have? I think we both have the same thing. We have this thing called energy.
Right.
And we also have, I believe, someone said, I have PMA. They said, you have PMA.
What is
positive mental outlook.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Attitude, positive mental attitude. But you have to have that in order to interview and want to listen to people.
That's right. I have an incredible curiosity about
Yeah, you have that.
Very blessed with that.
Right.
So it makes me want to engage with people and to learn stuff. So that's really good. And the energy thing, I don't know where yours comes from. I definitely feel it right now, but mine originally came from a place of fear of screwing up. And I turned all of that nervousness into whatever I've become since then. I feel like I've been able to take that and morph it into a place that appears as if I'm confident when creating an onstage persona. But it really comes from a place of being that scared little boy who was picked last for the softball team when I was 6 years old.
Are you, when you're performing and podcasts are performing and on stage, who are you looking at? Who's in the audience?
It depends
in your
on
head.
the situation, right? There are some audiences that are amazing. The energy is there. You feel connected to it, and it's very symbiotic. They feed off you. You feed off them. That's easy. But when times are dark out there and it's not going well, I try to make eye contact with the 1 or 2 or 3 or however many people that I see that I know are engaged. And that way, if I have laser focus on them, that gives me the feedback I need. And then I take that and I turn it back and I try to face the people that aren't as engaged to try to convert them into the friendly.
So I interviewed James Carville a couple of years ago, and he said he always sees his parents in the audience.
Really?
That said, he wants to please his parents. I mean, you think of someone like it shows that much confidence, but he's really as insecure as the rest of us.
Right. Yeah, man, we're all insecure, and like I said, I still feel like that kid not being picked for the softball team or whatever when I was little. But it's interesting that James Carville said that because my parents only came to one speaking event that I ever did in my entire life, and I got my aunt and uncle to one as well. And neither of those sessions, I was all up in my. I was a little too much up in my head because I was too worried about pleasing them as opposed to organically being myself. So I don't think about my family at all when I'm doing this stuff.
I don't either. Let's morph a little bit into the hospitality industry and move into, because you've seen everything. You've talked to so many people. The one thing I love about this medium is that we have so much knowledge that we can't even remember that we have.
That's right.
But how do you, I mean, there's a certain ethos of somebody who's an executive in hospitality. Hospitality is about being hospitable.
That's right.
And a lot of times, they don't know how to do that. How do you want to say this is hospitality for people that want to make it fun in a sense? What is the other part of the business where it's not fun? Why is it so boring? And when we're into the most exciting industry in the world?
I mean, everything can't be completely exciting all the time.
But you make it interesting, exciting, curiosity. How do you keep it fresh, really? And how do you? And I think your voice is a lot of it too.
Yeah. You just try to have different angles, and you have to work with each individual personality that comes on. And I'm very fortunate that I've been focusing on being a speaker, moderator, communicator for the last 10 plus years. So I've learned some things over time, and I've done enough reps. And this is what I tell people. I do speaker training and podcaster training type of stuff as well. And I always tell them, don't be upset if you don't understand it, because you've got to do it and do it and do it. And the more reps that you have, the more personalities, the more nuances that become evident to you. So what might take somebody that's only been at it a year or less, or is one of those people that are only on stage a couple of times a year, they don't have the understanding of the different types of personalities and how to create the triggers that will get each of those individuals to open up and show who they really are, and therefore bring a little bit of extra energy, and therefore provide information that they didn't even expect to provide because they feel so comfortable.
When you say on stage, I think that anybody that attends an event is on stage.
Correct.
And they have to give as much as they get. And so the lessons that you're talking about are not really for the person on stage.
No.
The person who attends and that participates in life, really.
Right. David, you're right. I'm not just because I'm on a platform on stage. That's not the only time I'm on stage. If I go to an event, from the second I get to the airport, because there's going to be people on the flight going to the same event, you have to have that persona. You have to be a heightened bit of yourself. There's nothing I like more than being completely left alone and to be quiet. I'm very introverted in that.
You're introverted. I'm introverted too, but we come off as not.
We're going to put out so much energy here. We're going to need time to recuperate from that, have some thoughtful time. So if I'm on stage, and I'll get back to that other point in a minute, if I'm on stage and I'm in front of a couple of thousand people and I've got CEOs of major hotel companies that I'm trying to put out there, I am giving it everything. I may not be that professional athlete who's leaving it on the field, but I, in my own way, am leaving it all on the stage. I will come off higher than I could possibly imagine because of the adrenaline. But 20, 30 minutes later, I need a nap, and I need it bad, because I've used up all of my energy.
So when did you go from that insecure kid to knowing that you're confident? Like, confidence is the number one thing that we get when we do it over and over again, the repeats. Do you have a moment that it's like it's just evolved, or did it kick in at one point?
It turned from that expression, fake it till you make it. That is honestly a lot of what I've done in my entire career. Another way to do it is, I like to call it act as if. Right? Pretend you're that person. And the more that you pretend you're that person, it's very difficult. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Just like anything else in life, you figure out what the mathematical formula is of whatever that challenge is that you have. And then you are able to actually start to stop pretending and start to be a little bit. And then eventually you learn how to do it. Before we turned on the microphones here, I was not in any mood to talk to you, but not you, just not in the mood to have the high energy kind of a thing. Second, we said hello. I became entirely and extremely focused on that. And I'm able to snap my fingers and kick into that particular mode. As soon as this is over, I'll go back into a coma until I go on my live today.
So one of the things I like to do before a conference that I have is I've figured out this sort of formula. I do these the night before a conference. I do these things called Jeffersonian style dinner parties. I don't know if you've ever been to them, but the idea is I bring all the speakers together and we talk about themselves and we try to break down and democratize the room in a sense. And I like to control the entire conversation. And I think it's one of the greatest things, because I think ultimately at an event, we want to create intimacy. So I asked the question, and I'm going to ask you this question. So what was your first job, and what did you learn from it that you use today?
My first ever job?
Ever job. And what did you learn from it that you're still getting benefits from that?
My first ever job, I worked at a place called Consumer Distributors. I think it must have been 1984 or 1985 or something like that. I was a young teenager and thought I knew everything, right? Now, Consumer Distributors was one of those old pre-internet type of things. It was a catalog store. For those younger viewers out there, think Amazon.com, but instead of ordering online, you go to the store, you flip through a massive catalog, you write something down on a piece of paper, and then someone like me would go and fetch it from the warehouse. I did not like the people that ran the thing. They were the people who managed it. And I didn't appreciate who they were as human beings. I don't think they may not have treated me, but I definitely didn't treat them right in my head. And I think coming out of that experience, I learned that we all have different backgrounds. We all have different levels of financial security, and we're all just trying to get by in this world. And that was a really valuable lesson, because you don't know people's history. And just because they may talk to you in a certain way, or just because they may behave in a certain way, is not an indication of who I am as a human being. It is not an indication of, it is not a trigger for how I should relate to them. Just because someone is not nice to me doesn't mean I have to give it back to them. And being a snotty little teenager who thought he knew everything, I was like that. I was rude and I was disrespectful. Sure, I might have been being disrespected, but I should be better than that. So what I took away from that is to always have respect and dignity for no matter who it is that I'm talking to because you don't know what their backstory is.
That's very interesting. When I do these dinner parties and everybody goes around the room and they talk about it, their primary lessons that first lesson they learned is so important. Where did you end up going? How did you get yourself into the hospitality side of the business? You went to the hotel magazines and things like that, but there must have been a journey before that.
Yeah, there was a journey, but before that, thanks for noticing my gray hairs and my age. I appreciate it.
Hey, 60 is the new 40.
You're the chairman, so you're probably a little bit older than I am. So
yeah, definitely.
So nothing. I started off my career trying to just figure stuff out. I didn't even know what I wanted to do when I graduated college, and I was at Tower Records. And for those of you who don't know, there used to be record stores, and they would have all these free giveaway magazines. And I was flipping through all of them, and I'm like, I could write better than this. And my buddies, you should do that. And the light bulb went off, and I knew I had to be a writer. So I started hitting up these magazines, and I became a music and entertainment writer at a Long Island publication. And it was great for a while. I got to hang out backstage with all these bands and party and do all of that. And then I would also go into the city and do all of these roundtable discussions with celebrities. It would be a celebrity at the head of the table, me, and all these sycophantic journalists around. And it was like this feedback loop of, hey, celebrity, you're so amazing. Tell us why you're so amazing. We love you. And the celebrity would be like, well, I am amazing, and this is why I'm amazing. And the whole thing made me sick. Plus, nobody wants to pay you to be a journalist to celebrities because they say you get to interview celebrities, so we don't have to pay you. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't like these celebrities. Why do I have to hang out with them? But what I really liked was that all these events were in amazing hotels. And I would see all the food that they were eating that I couldn't eat. And I would see the rooms that they were staying in that I couldn't stay. And I'm like, I got to get myself in on this. I found a way to weasel my way into the hospitality industry. And it went from there. It was freelancing and still doing some stuff in the music and entertainment community, believe it or not. My buddy in the late 1990s was the number one editor for videos in the hip hop genre. So I ran that company for a while, and he would edit the videos, and I would make sure all the rap talent was happy and satisfied and taken care of. So I got the hotel business, and I got a little celebrity thing, and then I finally moved just into hotels.
And so you were hotel journalism for a
long time. I started my current iteration of who I am today. I started just a little over 5 years ago.
And as a journalist, and now as you're like a curator for your community more than you are just an editor now. Yeah. How do you find the difference between being a journalist that's not necessarily getting a piece of the pie to a business guy also now being this facilitator of an industry and then being sensitive to that side of it? Has it changed how you think?
No. My goal in life, I think this is the hardest thing that I've ever done, is to allow myself to be me. And if I can be thoroughly and ultimately the human being that I want to be, that makes me happy, I think everyone else is going to come along for the ride. Some may not. Some are going to say, Glenn, you're too kooky. That was a weird joke. Why do you behave that way? But who's who I am, and I can't deny who I am. And by allowing me to be me, that's the only way that I'm going to be able to make connections with people and break through all of that stuff and be able to get people to share real stories that are going to help individuals. I'm not sure if that exactly answers your...
Yeah, no, that's okay. But when you do this interview in the hospitality business, especially, everyone is so uptight and they're all PR driven because the big chains always have the PR guys behind them.
Oh, yeah. And a little secret, sometimes those PR people are sitting off stage.
Like
live on air. Yeah.
How on script you have to stay, or how do they know about you that you're not going to be on script?
I've been in this business for 25 years.
Yeah.
And they trust me because I will not throw anybody under the bus. If I have to tell a story about a individual or a hotel brand that was completely horrible, I'm not going to call them out by name.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, this is an example. And I think I've developed over a while a style where I'm able to call out absolutely everybody, but not a single person at the same time. So it almost creates the perception that I'm the good guy for the business and I'm here on everyone's team, but I still have to call out this stuff. But don't worry, it's not you. I like you.
Like I position myself as the mayor of my niche. I use more of a political model around it. And you're there to help. The mayor takes out the trash as well as do all the great stuff.
Right.
So you're promoting the industry, but you're also being a truth teller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And you learn over time. And again, it's a matter of reps. I've been at this long enough that I know how to approach each individual person so they let their guard down and they could be open and honest with me and feel as if that they're going to be well taken care of. If you are going to be honest with who you are as a human being, that other person that's there, you must intimately trust them, or else you're not going to open up. And my job always fundamentally is not to worry about my performance, but making whoever the guest I'm talking to looks like a rock star. They are the star of the show, not me. Everything I do is designed to facilitate that feeling of awesomeness. So when they leave, they can feel really good about themselves.
And now, a quick word from our sponsor, BrandLive. There are so many virtual events platforms out there. Which one is right for you? How about the one that makes planning your next super important, stress-inducing virtual event easy, or even fun? Since 2010, BrandLive has supported thousands of events, millions of guests, and huge stars, including the President of the United States. With dedicated event support and the tools you need to be an event superhero. Visit brandlive.com to learn more.
I want to move on a little bit to, we've talked about how to be a guest at an event, how do you draw people out?
David, before we move on, we missed one thing because we were talking about when I was on stage, but we never talked about the rest of the thing where you got to bring it for the rest of the conference. You mind if I
go for it?
Real quick? Because I always hate when I'm listening to talk shows and a topic comes up and then it gets dropped. Right. You're like, no, I wanted to hear that.
Oh, I know. I totally get it.
All right. One of the things is you have to act as if you're on stage no matter what, because you are on stage at an event, David, right? This is what you were getting to before. If I'm having a one-on-one conversation, I take the same philosophy that I have when I'm on air in a conversation. Make a conversation about that person. Allow them to ask you questions, but answer it, but always turn it back to them. Make them feel good. Make them the hero. Ask them questions about who they are. That is absolutely essential when you're at a conference. Whether it's even if you're walking down the hallway with somebody, you got to make eye contact and wave at them or say hello, whatever the rule of engagement is with that particular person.
I heard one of your last ones, though, when you do that, one of your last podcasts, it was the funniest thing about how you miss the idea of walking past someone that you already had a conversation with and pretending you're not having to engage them again.
We've seen each other, but we'll just pretend we didn't. There's so many things like that. Like the move where you think you're somebody, but you forgot their name, so you try to spy their name badge from far away, so obvious you're looking at it. I could go 1,000 of those types.
And the glass half full trick. Oh, I have to get a drink.
I don't have that problem.
So we're both dealing right now, and this is like a barometer thing, of industries that are devastated. Yeah. How are people dealing? What is going to happen?
There's going to be a huge shakeup right now. This is a massive time of opportunity. Yes, people are going to suffer. Yes, people are going to fail. It is inevitable, but we are at an incredible inflection point in our society, and particularly in the hospitality and tourism businesses, where there are going to be insane amounts of opportunity, but you have to figure out what those opportunities are. You have to have the guts to take big risks, and you've got to make your moves now or soon before everything else reshuffles and you're not part of the game.
What's an example of somebody that's got to do something big? And what have people told you?
It's not that people are telling me stuff specifically. It's just I've been around the block and it's enough upturns, downturns, all of that kind of stuff to see what's going on. And you look back at the Great Recession, you look back at post 9/11, people were devastated. But then new technologies came out, new hotel companies were born, new this, new that, new the other thing. You don't have to be a rocket science to understand that with massive conflicts and massive issues in society, there's massive change that occurs out of it. And you have to figure out what your perception is going to be. Are you going to be the poor, woe is me type of person? And yeah, I had plenty of those moments in March and April of 2020, but now I've chosen to not have that. We can only lick our wounds for so long. As human beings, we need to find success, and you can't sit back and let life happen to you. Now more than ever is when you need to define your future. You need to take those chances. You need to make it happen.
Okay, that's on the hotel side and things like that. Where do you see us on the personal side? There, I see everyone wants to go out. They want to travel. Is it going to happen? Are we going to go into a golden age?
Sure, absolutely.
For a period of time, or do you think it's going to settle out?
We'll be back to it. We'll be back to it better than ever. I do the show No Vacancy Live every day, and my co-host Anthony Melchiori says it's going to be like the Roaring 20s. I agree with him. Hopefully not the end of the Roaring 20s with a horrible stock market crash and depression, but I think the sentiment is there. Again, going back to that opportunity, people feeling they're unshackled. They can go, they can have those experiences again, they can have fun. It always bothers me, and I see this both with how people view the hospitality industry and how people view society. We get all caught up with what we are feeling and experiencing in the moment, and then pretend or have fooled ourselves into believing that is the way things are always going to be. Now is just a temporal state of being. Things are always in flux. Things are they're always changing. And no matter how bad it is, and no matter how good it is, the universe is a pendulum. Things swing back and forth, back and forth. And you have to just hitch yourself to the ride when things are going up and have positive spirit. Plus, human nature is such that 1 year of a pandemic is not going to change how hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years of human conditioning. If that had happened, we would all have locked ourselves in the room after the 1918 pandemic. That didn't happen. So why would it happen again today?
We didn't even remember it.
It doesn't make sense. As a society, we didn't have any common knowledge of that until, there was a pandemic then? Oh, there were people wearing masks at baseball games? What?
Yeah. Are there any fundamental changes that you're seeing that the leaders are talking about that hasn't broken through, or is it pretty much?
I don't, David, tell me if you agree with this one. I don't see fundamental change happening as much as an acceleration of trends that were already in place prior to the pandemic. That's really how I see it. I still believe entirely in co-located workspaces. I still believe in the global nomad. I still believe digital natives are going to be looking at this world completely different and reinventing things in ways that you and I as older folks don't really understand at this point. There's nothing that I think is going to inexorably change in a negative light at all. It's just a matter of time.
I think you're right about the acceleration. I just was I'm doing a podcast with, you just did one on Students Ask Anything, which I thought was one of the greatest things because it's so amazing what they say and what they ask. This woman was telling me that in Asia, almost every hotel has got robots everywhere and things like that are happening.
Yeah, you look at the robot thing, David, but let's look at the fundamentals of hospitality ownership, right? The owners right now have been really hurt in terms of how much money they're going to make. And now there's this extra pressure, a potential rise in minimum wage. Now, I believe everybody should make a wage so they can feed their families and take care of themselves. I don't want to discuss the merits of whether or not we should raise the minimum wage, but it will cost more to operate hotels. And in capitalism, people try to figure out ways to spend less money to achieve more. And that's where robots, I think, are going to come in. Hopefully not at the bar, because I think the bartender is an essential individual for creating that brand, right? Because you're not going to remember the robot. You're going to remember a human being. But robots can be used, and automation can be used to increase service in ways that guests want, without impinging on the entire experience. So yes, robots will be there. There's a company that does robots that wash dishes and they don't break the dishes. It's pretty incredible. Why would you want to pay somebody if you can have a robot do that? Pizza's got robots now that are coming out that can make the pizzas and they can make them as good as a human being. So why wouldn't we use that? Why we don't build cars by hand, except the really crazy expensive ones anymore. They're mostly done by robots. Nobody thought about that and its effect on society. So we're going to see more of that kind of stuff. Yeah, go on, David.
Do you think that you still need, I believe that event organizers are really not event organizers, but they need to be collaboration artists, able to get in people's face and connect people like you and I do.
Right.
And that is, it's going to be more important than ever rather than going to the Excel spreadsheet on everything. You need to have the humanness has to come back in ways that
I don't see
be too expensive.
I don't see how you get things done without forming real meaningful relationships with people. They don't have to be all intimate relationships, but you both have to be on the same page about the level of your relationship and what you can and cannot do for each other, and be open and honest with that, even if you don't use the words, but you have a feeling of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate with people. And it's so essential that we get back to it and we form those relationships and spend time with people, because the people that I want to do business with are the people that I spend time with, the people that I get to know, the people that I have a shorthand relationship with. When I'm getting to know somebody, I really want to get to know somebody. And then when I know somebody, then you can text me and email me and we never have to talk again. But we know each other.
Exactly. What do you think about, with all the layoffs and everything, Marriott, a lot of the top people left that I know. Yep. Do you think that there's going to be a big hiring spree back, or do you think it's going to be much slower? Is it a U or a V, basically?
I think it's a shrugged shoulders confusion look, because here's what's happening. I'm speaking to a lot of the CEOs of these management companies, for example, right now. When you're talking big brands, you're talking about executives and all of that at that level. But when you're talking about what's going on at the properties, they're having, and we were recording this interview almost a year before the world fell apart from COVID. So a year ago at this time, it was impossible to get anybody to work in your hotel. Incredibly enough, David, the same thing is happening today. I was speaking to a CEO friend of a major management company that has over 50 properties just yesterday. And he was telling me when they're going back to rehire people, because they're getting busier and they want to rehire people, only 1 out of 4 people that they were forced to let go at the beginning of this crisis even want to come back. A lot of people have moved on. A lot of people don't want to do those same jobs anymore. So we are going to have as severe as a labor crunch as we have ever had in the hospitality industry, in my opinion, even as if need fewer people to be operating the hotels in the next couple of years. Now, when it comes to the executive level, a lot of those people were probably redundant already and probably weren't necessarily needed to keep operations moving as smoothly. So we'll see. Time will tell if the major branded hotel companies will continue to work at lower levels, or if that creep will start to come in like it does in every upcycle, where we start to have more expenses that we probably didn't need in the first place.
Are you seeing ownership changing in rapid ways with new players, new private equity, or new REITs, or whatever they're going to be called?
Yeah, I just saw I'm forgetting the name of the company right now. I apologize, but I just saw the announcement of $1 billion fund that just came out to help distressed properties and stuff. So what they want to do is they want to go in for properties in urban locations, which have been smacked around more than anybody. They want to say, hey, give us a piece of the pie. Here's some money. You could stay in business. We'll start to make profits because we're confident that things are going to come back. There's a lot of owners that are going to be forced to give up their properties. And it's very important that people understand the distinction between people that just had bad luck and people that probably shouldn't have gotten involved in deals anyway. After a 10-year streak, people started to believe, and it goes back to my point earlier, that the good times are never going to end. There is no such thing as a ceiling. So a lot of people made what they thought were good decisions at the time to go in and buy properties for way too much money that are going to be impossible to make that return on investment today. They will lose those properties. New people will come in, get a great deal on those hotels, and make a lot of money, in particular when people start traveling en masse again.
Are the new people that are coming in advising these new financial institutions? You're seeing a lot of the retreads of people that were inside of companies coming back and advising new owners. I see.
Yes, that's inevitable. When people leave a company, suddenly they're all consultants, right?
Yeah, everybody's a consultant. Yeah, exactly.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what kind of luck people have out there.
Let's end on your podcast. You seem to love doing it. You seem to have a big following. How big is it now? And what is your sort of dream and wish for it as the economy changes? Because people are home and they're depending on you.
Yeah.
Because they want to be connected.
So I started the No Vacancy podcast about 5 years ago. And when this crisis started, just a few months prior, I had just gotten access to LinkedIn Live. And I think that I just tried to be a positive beacon of hope for our community. And I wasn't thinking about it as this is going to be a successful show and maybe one day I'll make money off of it. We were all suffering. I went through a 48-hour period in March of last year where I lost 75% of my entire business. So I was in shock just like everybody else was. I took the hits just like everyone else was. So I just went online one day and had somebody come on and talk to me. And then we did it again the next day. And then Anthony started joining me every day, and people started to be coming on and be open and honest and sharing what they were going through and how they were tackling these problems in real ways that I had never seen before. And before you knew it, we created this incredible community of people that are out there actually supporting each other. Not to say that hotel people didn't support each other. They always did, but in a much more deeper, more meaningful way. These CEOs of management companies, and they would tell me, they would all call each other and say, what are you doing? How are you handling this problem? And we really were fortunate enough and blessed with the opportunity to be the center of something special, unpredictable. Nobody could have thought it would happen. And now, thank goodness, I seem to be in a position where I guess the universe is rewarding me in a sense. I've been able to get out of this in a meaningful way. I'm still not able to close a lot of deals yet, but I know that's going to be coming.
What kind of deals are you talking about? You're talking about in marketing and advertising
stuff. I lost David. I lost a gajillion speaking events, for example, but I was right. But I was fortunate enough to be able to do a few of them during the fall. In fact, the whole crisis wound up helping me with one client. I was supposed to do a speaking gig. I wound up getting paid much more by that particular client because I also helped advise them how to do events in this virtual format and help them get to the point where your first question is doing all of these things differently than you do on stage. It's a completely different skill set. It's a completely different way. So I've been able to find some new opportunities because I somehow inadvertently was forging a new path that none of us had gone down before.
Do you know that what I found in our industry is that the event organizers have become the de facto cultural officers because they're the closest ones to the audiences and to the employees. Mm-hmm. And so all the CEOs are saying, oh my God, what do we do now? How do we touch these people? You are out there all the time. We're out there. Yeah. So the executives are so locked in their ivory towers in many cases that they don't really know what to do in crisis situations.
Right. That's why I want to have a community of people where we could all learn from each other. There's enough room in our universe for everyone to be successful. We don't have to be all negative and fight with each other. Yeah, we could all root each other on, help each other with best practices. At the end of the day, if somebody who's competing against me that's podcasting or doing videos, I'm happy to talk to them. I'm happy to be friends with them. Let them be successful. I know that I have confidence in myself that I'm still going to be able to kill it, but that doesn't mean that someone else has to suffer for me to be successful. You know,
what is as we end? Tell us the best topic for your speeches? What do people really want from you when they hear, and what do they put on their marketing materials to get people to come? And then also, how do we find you?
Yeah, it's real easy. I really try to create speeches that are geared towards what the audience is going to be interested in any particular conference. One of the things that I try to really hard is get people to rethink conventional thinking. Again, going to the theme of a lot of this conversation. Just because people say it is, doesn't mean it is that way. Don't take anything for granted. Nothing is sacrosanct. The only thing fundamental in the universe is change is constant, and you need to be ahead of it. You need to think. Actually, I have a book coming out that I collaborated on in a week or so from that we're recording this called The Adapters. It's all about gutsy genius thinkers and about how they're taking strides now during COVID to position themselves for after COVID in order to be more successful in this new dynamic. So that, I think, is going to be a centerpiece for me and my partner on that project, Sean Worker, to go out there and do a lot of great speeches to help people understand this new way of thinking, this new way of being, and learn from these great examples of these incredible executives that we spoke to around the world that help us to create this.
And how do we find your podcast? How do we find No Vacancy?
Easy enough. Go to on Apple Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. Go to No Vacancy with Glenn Haussman, or Checking In with Anthony and Glenn. We got 2 different podcast feeds. It used to be 2 different shows. Then COVID hit, and I don't know how to deal with that one. Go to novacancynews.com. Of course, follow me on social media at Traveling Glenn. Follow not only No Vacancy Live, but please check out my video reports, No Vacancy News Today, which I report on the news and analyze the news. And of course, every Friday night, we got a brand new show, Friday Night Audit, where we try to capture the vibe of being at a hotel bar. I wear fun t-shirts. I have cocktails. We have laughs. Nothing serious. No real lesson to be learned. It's all about camaraderie.
I love it. You're fantastic. You've got a great following. I'm honored to have had this conversation with you. I totally didn't plan any of it.
Hey, neither did I, because you know what, honestly, David, all that planning and stuff, too much work. Better just jump.
I know, too much work. I know.
All right, let me say before we wrap up, I think what you've done at BizBash is awesome. I really respect you, and I've been a little jealous at times about how you've been able to achieve it. And I've looked at what you've done and I said, I got to do what that guy is doing.
Well, it's a mutual admiration society.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me here today.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on.